Hey Tyler, have you ever wanted to make your own podcast?
Absolutely I have.
Well, if you want to make your podcast, you should go to Anchor. It's the easiest way to make a podcast. Here's why. For one, it's free to use, no monthly fees. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer, so you don't need any of that special equipment. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership, and it's everything you need to make a podcast in one place.
If Jeff and I can make a podcast using Anchor, literally anybody can.
So, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
The following podcast is a member of the Pokecasters Network. Pokecasters Network, supporting Pokemon content creators, their shows, and the community of Pokemon fans. To find out more, check out PokecastersNetwork.com or find us on Twitter and Facebook.
Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 17 of the Pokemon Snapshot. Hi Tyler, how are you doing today?
I'm pretty fantastic, Jeff. I'm in week 2 of my 3-week break.
Yes, as you've told us, and I have to go back to work tomorrow after having the week off. But hey, got to enjoy the holiday season with my family. That's all I can ask for.
Yes, I too had to spend the holiday season with family.
So, if you want to get a hold of us, don't forget you can always tweet us at Pokemon Snapshot. And we actually have a tweet this week, Tyler.
Oh, really? Who's this from?
We have a tweet from William Walton. If you remember the name, he has tweeted us before. And he tweeted at us and he said, "At Pokemon Snapshot, a wild theory occurred to me while listening to the most recent episode. What if the narrator is future Ash?"
That's a very valid point, and it's ironic that you tweeted that at us because that subject does come up again in this week's episode in our discussions.
Yeah, I thought it was perfect. It came like, William, if you want to know what times we record, it came like 30 minutes before we started recording.
Yeah, so you had perfect timing.
Yeah, you tweeted just in time to be added into this episode and didn't have to wait to hear it until next episode. And if you want to tweet us like William did, don't forget, as I said before, you can tweet us at Pokemon Snapshot, or you can email us at thepokemonsnapshot at gmail.com. And I think that's it, Tyler. Are we ready to get into the episode?
Oh, I'm ready, Jeff.
Alright, and as we said before, this is episode 17, and it was called Island of the Giant Pokemon, which it was called the exact same thing in Japanese, also called Island of the Giant Pokemon, except they put an exclamation point question mark at the end of it. This episode aired on July 22nd, 1997 in Japan, and on September 30th, 1998 in the United States. Alright, Tyler, let's get into the episode.
All right, let's do this. Before we get started, Jeff and I were actually talking about this before we started recording. I just want to warn everybody in advance that there's going to be a lot of scene jumping going on here. There's 3 different groups, all doing their own different thing all around the island, and this episode's just like, boom, here's Ash, boom, here's Pokemon, boom, here's Team Rocket, and it just jumps around. So, I'll do my best to smooth out some of the transitioning, but we are going to be dealing with that little beast during this episode. Otherwise, it's a pretty good one, though. We begin our episode with the narrator reminding us how Magikarp evolved into Gyarados and swallowed the whole group into a cyclone using Dragon Rage, which, as we mentioned last time, was a extremely overpowered attack in this show versus what it is in the games. The narrator also says, "Talk about a twist of fate, round and round they go, where they stop, even I don't know." And you gotta love those puns the narrator's been dropping lately. Like, I feel like the last few episodes in a row, he's just dropping pun after pun after pun. Probably Ash's dad sure is clever. Or future Ash, who knows?
Yeah, and I said that he is becoming really punny once the team's in mortal danger. Like, he wasn't as punny before, he dropped one here or there, but these last 3 episodes where the team is, like, in trouble, they're in big trouble, is when he gets funny. But that may be because he's Ash, so he knows they are coming out alive.
Or it's Ash's dad and doesn't care what happens to Ash in the long run, so it's really not as distressing to him.
That could be too.
You never know. We will never know, I don't think. But yeah, I agree. It's kind of like the narrator is sort of taking on the role of the comic relief during otherwise incredibly stressful situations. They're like, oh, we need the narrator to throw in some puns here to distract us from the fact that we've almost killed everybody multiple times in the last few episodes. We then flash to a sunny beach. So after the narrator's done, we flash to a sunny beach and see Ash and the party awaking face first in the sand. Ash is the first to come to, and he wakes up the others. Brock asks how they survived, and Ash says that they were sure we're lucky. He then realizes in horror that not only is Pikachu gone, but he only has 2 of his Pokeballs left on his belt.
And with how crazy that, I guess, Dragon Rage was, they were really lucky that they ended up together, was my thought. What are the chances of them just landing in the sand right next to each other?
Well, that and Team Rocket, I think it would have been kind of cool if they would have had, like, Jessie with Ash or something like that. But nope, they just split into their usual groups. Good old Cyclone keeping the rhythm of the show going.
That could have been really interesting, like Jessie with Ash, James with Misty, then Meowth with Brock or something like that. Or then even mix their Pokemon up as well.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They could have done a lot with this, but they didn't. Good job, Cyclone. You ruined it. We then change scenes again to see Team Rocket up to their waist and upside down in the sand. A Krabby waddles up, looks them over, and pokes them both with its pincers. It then decides that after this doesn't work, that it's going to pinch them. So it pinches them and startles them awake. They shoot out of the sand, and without missing a beat, they exclaim that they have survived again and are excited. Pikachu will be definitely disappointed to hear this news.
I'm actually surprised this doesn't happen more often. They send all of these children out into the world. You think more children would have ended up missing or attacked by wild Pokemon?
It's probably like some dark part of the world that they choose to ignore because it's a children's show. Like, we're just going to leave out the high mortality rate for these children that go off into the world to hunt Pokemon on their own. It's got to be high, though. Jessie and James then say that they are invincible, so they're very happy. They've been woken up in a rude way, but they're happy they're alive. And they're celebrating. However, this is short-lived because they soon realize that all of their Pokemon and money is gone.
And in this, they mention how, where they got Ekans and Koffing from. They said, a Christmas present and a birthday present. Which it was actually different in Japanese because, Japanese culture is different than over here in the United States. So in the Japanese version, Jessie, instead of getting Ekans for her birthday, was given Ekans during the Ghost Festival, which is called Shugen, and James, instead of getting Koffing at Christmas, or it was the other way around, I honestly can't remember, but he was given Koffing during the year-end gift giving called Osaibo.
Osaibo, I like that. So that's kind of interesting how they, used appropriate holidays for the 2 different countries that they were going for. Jessie wonders, so after this happens, Jessie wonders how they will survive, and James says that they can just call for help. He points out a phone booth further down the beach, but his excitement is short-lived as he is reminded and they realize that they don't actually have any change to use this payphone. And for you children out there that are listening to the show, payphones were these phones before cell phones that you had to deposit change into to call people. I had an encounter with this one time, and I really feel bad for Team Rocket. I was at the mall. I was dropped off. I had my money that I had saved up, and I was going to go to the arcade. It was called Aladdin's Castle, Southern Hills Mall in Sioux City, Iowa.
We had an Aladdin's Castle, too, where I grew up.
That is amazing, Jeff. But it was the Aladdin's Castle arcade, and I severely overestimated how much playtime the amount of money I brought with me was. It was like $5. So I had 3 hours to go at this mall, and my mom had just dropped me off. And so I'm like, well, shoot, I'm already out of money. I'm going to go call so she can pick me up so I'm not stuck here all afternoon watching other people have fun. I go to use a payphone, and I don't have any change, but I did have a $1 bill left. That was wise thinking. I don't think you could break a $1 bill for more coins. It was there was a minimum amount. But anyway, I go to a Beanie Baby shop. This is going to date this story. It's a Beanie Baby shop in the mall. There's this old lady working behind the counter who owns it. And I'm like, hey, can you break $1 for some change? You know what she said, Jeff? I don't break change. And it was at that moment that I decided this woman was my mortal enemy, and I take great pleasure in knowing that her business likely folded, because we all know what happened with Beanie Babies.
Yeah, Beanie Babies are not around anymore. Well, they are, but they're not like they used to be.
Oh no, this was like the thing. Around the same time Pokemon was happening.
Yeah, she probably kept all her tags on.
Could you imagine what would have happened, and I don't know why they didn't do this, if they had done a team-up between Beanie Baby and Pokemon? Like, done a whole, like, Pokemon line of Beanie Babies? Because, I mean, they were at their peak popularity at the same time.
That would have been amazing. I didn't have very many Beanie Babies, but my brother actually collected them. And we would, like, go to the flea market, and there's always the person at the flea market selling Beanie Babies for, like, $2.
Of course.
And he would, like... My dad would let him buy a few every time we went. They had the flea market during the summer. They had it once a month, and we would go. It was our 1 week to skip church, and we would go, and he would buy Beanie Babies, and I would mainly look for, like, old video games.
And between the two of you, honestly, that shocks me that he was the one that was into Beanie Babies and not you. Because I'm not going to throw any shade here, but Jeff's brother is like an army vet, like kind of a manly dude, football player, all that stuff. Wrestler or football player, maybe both. I don't know. He's a manly dude.
Both.
Yeah, he's your manlier of the two of them. So it kind of surprises me. I certainly had no Beanie Babies at all. Yeah.
So yeah, when I saw the payphone, I thought how it really shows the era, kind of like you did, because payphones aren't a thing anymore.
No, they're not.
Have you ever been to a hotel now? Because back in the day, like, the big hotels used to have a room just full of payphones, or even the airports.
Yeah, a payphone bank.
And now they're just completely empty.
Yeah, I think a lot of hotels repurpose them as like an internet cafe type of thing.
Yeah, a lot of places I've seen, they've like kept the counters where the payphones used to sit, but now it's just kind of a place where you can like go in and just work on your computer or whatever.
Right.
But like you, I remember using a payphone once, but it was a little after payphones were starting to become outdated. It was in the late 2000s because I was traveling back to the United States from Belgium. I think it was the trip from Belgium. And I kept my phone on me because I was using it as a clock to figure out how much, of the plane flight we had left. So, but by the time I got into Chicago, which, by the way, I was 2 hours late from my flight because the word I got when my flight from Belgium to London happened, when I got to London, they said your flight from Chicago never showed up.
Oh, no. Did they ever find it?
I have no idea, but that was all I was told. Your flight from Chicago never showed up.
Well, that's distressing.
Yeah. So, 2010 flight from London or Chicago to London. I hope you survived if you were ever on this flight, because I guess it never showed up. But yeah, so we're working flight. I finally got a flight, but I'm in London, so I can't contact my parents. It wasn't like back then where you could just connect to the internet and just message anyone. Even then, the internet still wasn't as big as it was now, 10 years ago. So I get in Chicago, and my phone is dead, completely dead, so I had to use a payphone to contact my parents to tell them that, hey, I know you're already there to pick me up, but I'm not arriving for like 4 more hours.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm sure they love that call.
Yeah, I mean, they were already at the airport, but they went and did something. It was a small little airport that they went to the mall or something, but yeah, so that was my encounter with a payphone. Looks like we both had not great encounters with payphones.
Mine was more of a not great encounter with a Beanie Baby shop salesperson, but yeah, for the most part, pretty negative experience.
Yeah.
I did end up, by the way, getting stuck wandering around the mall. Nobody would break $1. Apparently, I don't know why that is, but...
You probably just look suspicious.
This is probably true, actually. Well, now that our little tirade on payphones and nostalgia from the late 90s is over, we changed scenes yet again. So Jesse and James have gone to the payphone. They realize they don't have any change, and they're like, well, we changed scenes. And see that Pikachu is alive and well. He is walking along the beach when he comes upon a bunch of Pokeballs laying in the sand. He realizes they are ashes, and he releases Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle. He asks them if they are okay, and they say they are, but they are lost and don't know where Ash is. This is all done with subtitles. So there's like this whole conversation where they're talking to one another, asking if they're okay, so on and so forth, and there's subtitles translating what they're saying. I'm not sure if we've ever seen subtitles for the Pokemon speech yet, but here it is.
Yeah, and I just thought of something. So we've realized that it's Pikachu, Charmander, Bulbasaur, and Squirtle with them.
Right.
Ash's 2 Pokemon who left are Butterfree and Pidgeotto, his flying Pokemon.
Okay.
He never sent them out this whole episode to search for the rest of his squad.
Well, you see, Jeff, that would require some critical thinking that I do not believe Ash is capable of.
True, but I just randomly thought of that. I'm like, wow, that makes no sense. I guess the episode would have been like 5 minutes long, but...
Probably. They would have been sent up and been like, there they are.
But yeah, I did find some interesting information about the subtitles used in this episode because I believe it's the only episode that uses subtitles. Which makes sense because the Pokemon are by themselves. It wouldn't be as interesting of an episode. Even on our end, it probably would have been really short if we didn't know what they were saying.
This is very true.
So, in some languages, I'm not sure which ones, they actually dubbed voices for the Pokemon in the language they were speaking in.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so kind of think of Detective Pikachu where he speaks English. It was like that. Whatever language they were in, they just dubbed over the Pokemon voices. But there was an issue in India where the episode aired on Cartoon Network. The Pokemon were given voiceovers and they kept the English subtitles. So they kept subtitles and the Pokemon were given voiceover, so they kind of did both of them. But in India, there's also like their main television network called Hungama TV. When it switched from Cartoon Network to Hungama TV, the Pokemon did not receive voiceovers, but they removed the subtitles.
Oh, interesting.
So this made it very difficult to understand what they were saying.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I don't know, did they not think this through, but they removed both ways to understand what they were saying.
I would definitely say that they did not think it through, Jeff, because none of that plan made any sense whatsoever.
Yeah.
After the party is reunited, they look down the beach and they see a Slowpoke laying on a rock sunbathing. They approach Slowpoke and Pikachu says hello while Charmander asks where they are. However, the Slowpoke just ignores them and they continue to question it, but then it just kind of gets up. So the Slowpoke gets up, sticks its tail in the water, and just sort of stands there. We then see Squirtle and Bulbasaur relaxing on the beach watching Squirtle. Or they're sitting on the beach and watching, and Squirtle comments how peaceful it is, and Bulbasaur agrees.
Now, I'll get into this in just a little bit longer on in the episode, but this episode I love because it lets you see the Pokemon's personalities a bit more now that they can talk.
It's very true. I kind of noticed that too, and what's funny is the personalities that we are showing as the personalities I could have already predicted from the Origin episodes.
Yeah, actually, and we'll get into it after a couple dialogue lines down the line. I kind of already have, where you can tell what their personalities are like. So I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Right. I just expected Bulbasaur to be more stabby, but I'll wait for that. We then change scenes again, and it is nighttime. Pikachu and the others are walking down a path in the forest, and they're using Charmander's tail as a light source. Pikachu comments that he doesn't see Ash or anyone anywhere. Charmander wonders if they just disappeared, and Squirtle makes a really creepy face, shows his teeth, and says that they probably got eaten by wild Pokemon. Yikes, Squirtle. That is a bit extreme. Pikachu and Charmander get upset, and Squirtle apologizes. Bulbasaur then suggests that Ash may have forgotten about them, and Pikachu says that he would never do that.
And as I said earlier, this goes back to what I said about their personality, so I'm going to kind of lay it all out for people who aren't watching and just kind of listening to us. But Bulbasaur didn't trust humans before Ash caught him, so he thinks they are abandoned, probably because he does not trust the humans that come back and get him. So that kind of goes back with how he was caught. Charmander, who trusts a little too much based on that he stayed on the rock and risked death to wait for Damien, is very trusting that Ash will return, kind of like he was very trusting that Damien would return. Can't believe I'm saying this, but Ash has treated him a little bit better than Damien ever did.
That's true. He hasn't abandoned him and left him to die yet.
Yeah, he's abandoned now, but it's not on Ash's fault, so we'll give him that credit. And then there's Squirtle, who he was with the Squirtle squad. He was a trickster, and then that's kind of what he does with saying monsters will eat him and making that scary face. He's being the trickster again. And then you have Pikachu, who is always Ash's number one, and of course he is going to keep looking for him because him and Ash are inseparable.
Right. I kind of thought similar, like all those personality traits make perfect sense based on the origin episodes. Like I said, the only thing I think we're missing here is Bulbasaur should be a little more stabby. Other than that, though, I think it's pretty solid. As the other Pokemon agree with Pikachu that they would see Ash again and that he would not have forgotten about them, we see Meowth and Koffing and Ekans, and they are watching these 4 Pokemon, from down the path. Meowth is surprised they survived and says that he can finally get his revenge. He steps out before Pikachu and the gang and does a short version of the Team Rocket poem. This startles Pikachu, but then Pikachu sighs in relief and says, "Oh, it's just Meowth." This causes Meowth to fall over in typical anime fashion because he is upset that his little ambush didn't work and Pikachu is not afraid of him. Meowth hops back up and says that Team Rocket motto seems to be losing its impact and tells Koffing and Ekans to attack, but they ignore him and tell him that he isn't the master, so they don't have to obey him.
And I just want to say that the motto lost its impact a long time ago, and we are only 17 episodes in.
The motto has really never had any impact on me. Like, it's just so not threatening. It's like, Team Rocket, prepare for trouble, huh? Oh my gosh, wow, so intimidating. Meowth tells them he is twice as smart as Jesse and James, and they buckle down and say that they won't listen to him. So Ekans and Koffing are saying, no, we are not going to attack these Pokemon. You can't tell us what to do. Meowth then suggests that they are all bad guys and don't need masters to listen to, but they stand their ground and will not attack. They say that there are no bad Pokemon and that Pokemon only do bad things when their masters are bad and tell them to. I definitely did not expect this level of depth from Koffing and Ekans, but here we are.
Yeah, you are definitely right. This is great depth. But my question is, why do they speak in broken English and not complete English like everyone else? I wonder if they do the same thing in Japanese where it's not, it's broken Japanese and not like fluent Japanese. I don't know if they were trying to make them sound stupid because they are the bad guys.
I interpreted it not as sounding stupid, but more of as sounding, what's the word I'm looking for? Like robotic almost. Like they just follow commands. There's not a whole lot of like critical thinking going on in their little heads. They just know what they're supposed to do and they do it. Like they're kind of like the mindless henchmen type of thing. That's kind of the vibe I got from it.
Okay, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Meowth gets upset and says that his master isn't around, but he still seems to act like a rat. Who is Meowth's master? Does this suggest it isn't Jesse and James, and could it be the leader of Team Rocket?
So, I'm not going to spoil anything here because I get in trouble for that.
Right, spoiler king alert.
But we do get an episode way down the line during season 1, so it'll happen during the first 84 episodes, or 82, or however many there are. But we do get an episode about Meowth's backstory.
Okay, excellent. So that question will be answered, marking it on my calendar. Just then, Pikachu and the gang step up angrily. So after watching Meowth trying to convince Ekans and Koffing to join him in a battle against them, they kind of step up and they ask Meowth if he really wants to fight all of them. Meowth says it isn't fair because he's outnumbered. He looks up to see Ekans and Koffing having a tea party. Meowth then falls over for the second time in typical anime fashion and suggests that they will instead call it a draw.
And I really liked that Koffing and Ekans were having that tea party. They must travel with one like Brock does, so I thought Brock would be really proud of them.
There must be some really like sweet foldable kitchenware in the Pokemon universe that is not discussed, because we keep seeing it show up, and it's pretty awesome. It'd be great for camping in the real world.
Yeah, I mean, they do have those foldable camping sets, but they're never as nice as the tea sets that they've used in this show.
No, they are not. Funny that you mentioned that. I gave my wife a foldable kitchen set for our camping for this summer. I mean, it was a bit of a stereotypically sexist gift, but she enjoyed it. Definitely not as good as what they're rocking in Pokemon, so I'm a little disappointed. We then see a campfire burning, and all the Pokemon are sitting around it eating apples and other various fruits. They are all talking about how they are looking for their masters, and Bulbasaur again says that they have been abandoned. Yikes, Bulbasaur.
And I always thought it's interesting that he's the one that thinks he's been abandoned, because Charmander and Squirtle were actually abandoned before they met Ash. I mean, Bulbasaur just decided to help all those Pokemon.
That's very true. And I just get the feeling that Bulbasaur is a bit of a negative Nancy, and that's why we're seeing this.
Probably leads to his serial killer tendencies.
Oh, definitely leads to his serial killer tendencies. Definitely. This conversation worries Ekans and Koffing, but Pikachu says that this isn't true. They are not abandoned. Before anyone can respond, though, we see Meowth tied to a tree and yelling and asking if anyone is going to give him something to eat. Squirtle asks him if he is sorry yet, and Meowth says that he doesn't apologize, so Squirtle responds saying that he won't be getting any food then. Meowth continues to squirm and yell when just then they all hear a loud bang in the forest. It sounds like massive footsteps headed in their direction. You know, think Jurassic Park where they're sitting in the car and the water starts to ripple as the T-Rex is marching up. That's almost exactly what this sounds like. In fact, I get a whole Jurassic Park vibe out of this episode in general. They all watch in terror when all of a sudden, a giant Rhydon the size of a building emerges from the forest with red eyes. All the Pokemon flee in terror, and Meowth yells for someone to untie him, so Pikachu turns around and actually unties Meowth. Meowth is initially surprised that Pikachu decided to help, probably because Pikachu tried to kill them in the last episode, or at least was disappointed that they died. I can't remember how that went. But then Meowth, in typical fashion, just says that he could have gotten himself out.
I just think Pikachu must have had a change of heart since the last episode, because he was disappointed that Meowth did not die last time.
I know, and now he's saving Meowth. What the heck? Meowth wonders where Ash could be, and suddenly we flash to Ash, Misty, and Brock being chased by Zapdos. And I think my notes were wrong on that. It's probably Pikachu wondering where Ash could be.
That's probably right.
That's gotta be it. So, typo. Anyway, Pikachu wonders where Ash could be, and then we flash and change scenes to Ashy, Mist, and Brock being chased by a giant Zapdos. And as a reminder, Zapdos is that electric bird-type legendary Pokemon, so it's pretty awesome seeing this. They all fall to the ground as light flashes over them, and Zapdos flies away. They get up, and Misty says that she has never seen a flying Pokemon like that before. Brock then, in his usual ways, says the obvious and points out that this place is dangerous and that they should find a place to crash for the night. Ash agrees and then thinks to himself that he hopes Pikachu is okay and that all of his Pokemon stick together. We then change scenes for the 30th time so far to Jesse and James also running from a Pokemon, and this one is the legendary fire-type flying Pokemon Moltres as it shoots fire at them. As they are running, they run into a keep out sign and say, "It's a good sign." Ha!
And I'm gonna correct you there. It's Moltres.
Moltres.
Because it's Articuno, Zapdos, Moltres.
Okay. Like I said, sometimes I mispronounce these names before I hear them said in the show because most of my Pokemon experience comes from reading the text. And I wasn't a nerd and looked up pronunciations like you were, Jeff.
That hurts. But after Team Rocket falls into that sign, we go into our Who's That Pokemon segment.
Who's that Pokemon?
And our Who's That Pokemon for this week is Slowbro, who is known as Yadoran in Japanese. So, some basic information about Slowbro. He's number 80 in the Pokedex. He has 3 forms, so bear with me. His typing is Water and Psychic, and that's his regular form and his Mega form, and then he's Poison and Psychic in his Galarian form. And that Galarian form was just revealed this year because of the Pokemon Sword and Shield DLC. His height, he is 5'3" in both regular and Galarian forms, and he's 6'7" in his Mega form. His weight is 173.1 pounds regularly, 155.4 pounds Galarian, and 264.6 pounds for Mega. and he is known as the Hermit Crab Pokemon. And he can Mega Evolve with Slowbro. Alright, Slowbro's origin. His name comes from Slowbro is a combination of slow and bro, which is short for brother, and may just be used in a general sense, or it could refer to the brotherly symbiotic relationship shared by the combined form of Slowpoke and Shelter. His Japanese name Yadoran may be taken to mean to not lodge or dwell. It may also reference Yadokari, which is a hermit crab, or Yadonushi, which means parasitic host. What is Slowbro based off of? Slowbro's shell and lifestyle are somewhat similar to hermit crabs, though it is physically similar to giant otters, giant salamanders, and hippopotamuses. Slowbro's appearance may also be a reference to the mythical Sazai Oni, a magical sea demon of Japanese folklore, distinguished by its spiny Sazai or turban-shaped snail shell. Its parasitic relationship with Shelter may be inspired by leeches. Interestingly enough, Slowbro is known as the hermit crab Pokemon, and many real-world parasites, including leeches, often target crabs. And then we have Galarian Slowbro's poison typing may be a reference to cone snails, which have cone-shaped shells and are highly venomous. The shell's position on Slowbro's arm and squirting liquid from the tip could be an imitation of arm cannons in fictional media. Alright, Slowbro's biology. Slowbro is a bipedal pink Pokemon with a tan-striped belly and a rounded tan muzzle. It has large vacant eyes, curled ears, and 2 small pointed teeth protruding from its upper jaw. It has 3 clawed fingers on its hands and 2 clawed toes on its feet. There is a shelter attached to its tail. The shelter has a gray spiral shell with darker gray spots and a small triangular eyes near the base. There are several spikes across the surface of the shelter, and it holds onto Slowbro with many sharp teeth. Shelter's developed its spiral form in an effort to suck more sweetness out of Slowbro's tail. If its tail or the shelter attached to it is broken off, Slowbro will revert to its unevolved form, Slowpoke. Alright, when Slowbro Mega Evolves, it becomes engulfed by the shelter so that only its head, arms, and white-tipped tails are visible. Its head pokes out of the mouth of the shelter and is surrounded by Shelter's now larger teeth. The spiral shelter now has an opening at its tip, allowing the tail of Slowbro to stick out. Mega Slowbro balances on its tail due to its legs being engulfed. It can move by bouncing, using its tail as a spring. The spikes on its shelter are now reduced to 4 on the bottom section of its body, and the dark spots only visible on the middle section. Mega Slowbro's energy has gathered into Shelter, which has increased its hardness. This allows it to act as an armor so hard that nothing can scratch it. Slowpoke is virtually unchanged, but it gains more power and motivation from Shelter's digestive fluids. And then lastly, we have in Galar, Galarian Slowbro's appearance is due to Shelter biting its arms instead of the tail, causing a chemical reaction with the consumed Galarica spices within its bodies. The Shelter attached to the arm resembles the Shelter tail from its Cantonian counterpart, but smaller with a purple tip shaped like a stinger and even lacks pupils. It has a slight color difference with purple spots on its forehead. Its mouth and paws are also purple while its belly remains gray. Alright, some Pokedex entries from Slowbro. Red and Blue states that Shelter that is latched onto Slowpoke's tail is said to feed on the host's leftover scraps. Pokemon Silver says, naturally dull to begin with, it's lost its ability to feel pain due to Shelter's seeping poison. Pokemon Crystal says, unattached Shelter won't let go because of the tasty flavor that oozes out of its tail.
That's actually pretty disgusting.
That is, and with the Shelter, I'm surprised there's never been like a different form of Shelter that they've created in all these Pokemon, because it's always said Shelter, so why don't they just create this form of Shelter somewhere?
I have no idea.
Pokemon Emerald says, its tail has a Shelter firmly attached with a bite. As a result, the tail can't be used for fishing anymore. This forces it to reluctantly swim and catch prey. Which is kind of funny if you think about it, because that's just saying Slowbro's so mad it can't be lazy anymore, it has to reluctantly swim. Pokemon Sun says, as spaces out while gazing at the sea with Shelter's poison flowing through its body, it becomes even spacier. Pokemon Moon says, whenever Shelter bites down hard on its tail, it gives Slowbro a flash of inspiration. which it forgets a moment later. And then Ultra Sun for its Mega form says, tremendous energy strengthened the power of the shelter on its tail, but it doesn't really affect Slowpoke. So when you Mega Evolve a Slowbro, the shelter is becoming stronger, not the Slowbro.
That's kind of interesting.
Yep, it says it doesn't affect Slowpoke. And it's interesting how these Pokédex entries call it Slowpoke. Like, the form of the shelter and Slowpoke together make the Slowbro, but if you're talking about just the pink part, it's just a Slowpoke. And then Pokemon Sword says, and this is for its Galarian form, a shelter bite set off a chemical reaction with the spices inside of Slowbro's body, causing Slowbro to become a poison-type Pokemon. And then a couple of trivia facts about Slowbro. No other Pokemon has the same type combination as Galarian Slowbro at this time, so it's the only poison psychic type. Actually, that may not be true because if you count I guess the whole evolution, Slowpoke, Slowbro, and Slowking, the Galarian forms are the only psychic and poison types. And then Slowbro is the only Pokemon to have both a Mega Evolution and a regional form. And that's our Who's That Pokemon?
Who's that Pokemon?
It was such an odd choice for them to do that Who's That Pokemon in this episode, considering so far we haven't even seen a Slowbro.
Yeah, and if later on I have changed them around to kind of match with the episode, and we will get to points farther down the line where the Pokemon that's important we've already talked about, and we don't want to talk about the same Pokemon so close together.
That makes sense. I could see that.
So I pick a random one, but I should have went with Slowpoke here and just changed what the Who's That Pokemon was about, but I just went with what they decided to keep.
Hey, you know me, I'm all for sticking to what the episode did. I just thought it was kind of odd that they did that.
Yeah.
After the encounter of Jesse and James running into a sign, we change scenes, where we see all the Pokemon sitting around what appears to be a sushi bar and eating as Slowbro serves up food. They all look depressed and some are crying.
So there's your Slowbro.
There is my Slowbro. It didn't take long, but it did not show up before the Who's That Pokemon, and I'm pretty sure this is the only scene it's in.
So my question is, how many customers does Slowbro get out here? This seems like a weird place to set up a bar.
Oh, it's definitely a weird place to set up a bar.
And I know you said like a sushi bar, and they never imply it's a bar, but in the original, someone actually says the word barkeep to Slowbro.
Interesting.
And if you look real closely at that scene, Meowth and Bulbasaur are actually drunk.
I did miss that during my watch through.
Meowth is like slumped over and Bulbasaur is like arguing, which makes sense. I feel like Bulbasaur would be an angry drunk.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Definitely, or a murderous one.
Yeah, and their cheeks are red, like, flushed when you get drunk.
Right. I wouldn't know about that, but I've heard that's what happens. Additionally, and to kind of throw this out there, I called it a sushi bar because I've never been to Japan, but when you see things from Japan, you always see these little bars that face the outside street, and you always see Japanese, usually men, sitting around it, drinking sake and eating sushi. That's definitely what this looked like to me. So yeah, I definitely think the bar serving alcohol, is pretty implied here.
Yeah.
Morning then comes, and we see all the Pokemon have slept in a giant pile on the ground. They're all cuddled up, sleeping it off. Apparently Pikachu and Bulbasaur are really sleeping it off. And we also then change scenes again to see Ash and the party waking up in a cave. And then we change scenes again to see Jesse and James waking up off the ground from hitting the sign. They then head over to the payphone, and James reminds her that they don't have any money. Jesse then tells James that there is one number they can always call for free, and she places a collect call to their boss. This freaks James out.
So earlier, Tyler gave us a little history lesson about payphones. So I decided to put in here a little history lesson about calling collect. Do you remember when that was a thing?
Oh, I absolutely remember when that was a thing.
So if you're younger and you're not really sure what that means, back in the day, it cost extra money to make a long distance call. which meant any call outside of your immediate community. If they had a different, like, 3 numbers, you had a, it was called a long distance call. And even payphones, I think the farther away, the more it costs to send the call.
I'm not sure on that, but...
I'm not 100% sure, but even at payphones, you could call collect, and what it did was, instead of you having to pay that extra money, it made the person you were calling pay that extra money.
And fun fact, they would tell you to, like, they would, like, you know, ask for, like, a name or something, and what you could do to bypass the charges is just real quick say whatever it is you were going to say, and then the person could deny the phone call. So, like, if you're calling your mom in a different area code, you could be like, you know, Mom, come pick me up at the mall in 5 minutes. And then, like, they'd hear that and be like, deny call. And then they'd hang it up, and then you wouldn't have to pay for it. So that's a life hack from the 90s.
A life hack from the 90s, before life hacks were even a thing.
Yes.
And really, now that you mentioned that, since they had to do it that way, I'm really surprised their boss even picked up the phone.
Yeah, I know. I wouldn't have picked it up.
But every time I think of calling collect, I remember, do you remember those commercials from the late 90s, early 2000s with Carrot Top?
No, I do not.
You know who Carrot Top is, right?
I know who Carrot Top is, yeah.
Yeah, so he would do these commercials, and I actually looked up, and I guess it was not a collect commercial, but it was pretty much the same thing. He worked for AT&T, and he would be on these commercials where he would go, you know, they had a little jingle at the beginning. It would be 1-800-CALLATT, which is AT&T's version of collect calls, and all the commercials involved Carrot Top, which, if you don't know who that was, I'm not even sure. He was a comedian.
He was a comedian, but a not very funny one.
Yeah, not very funny one. He was your typical redhead. He had like an afro, and it was all red, and you know, the typical redhead, pasty white, freckly skin.
Right, but he's ripped.
I did not know he was ripped.
I don't know if he was ripped in the 90s, but he's ripped now. He's on a commercial not too long ago that I saw. He's still around.
Yeah, so that was... You guys will learn so much from the 90s from Tyler and I. You learned about payphones, calling collect, and who Carrot Top was. And Beanie Babies.
And Beanie Babies. Well, after the boss accepts the call, he scolds them for calling so early in the morning, but Jesse and James then do the little poem thing over the phone with their trademark music playing like the background music of the phone would. However, this upsets the boss and he hangs up on them. Instead of trying again like normal people, they start to follow the phone booth cable, thinking it will lead them to the phone company.
And I had a few things about this scene. One, what was the point of the motto here? And they wonder why their boss gets frustrated with them. Like, for one, he's already paying for this call, and so if it's a collect call, the longer the call, the more it's going to cost.
Right.
So they just made it even longer. But I did really like, this was my second point, I really like how they made an R with the telephone cord, because, you know, phones used to have cords back then.
Right.
And then, and you answer this later, and I didn't realize, but I must have missed the line, but my last thing to say was, why did they stay in the phone booth? Couldn't they have followed the line without dragging an extremely heavy booth with them?
It was to protect them from the giant Pokemon. They had to stay in the phone booth.
Yeah, I forgot they were already running from the Moltres at this time. So,
yep.
I just didn't realize what would have happened, because I didn't think the phone booth would actually protect them, but I guess Team Rocket, you do you.
Absolutely. We then see the Pokemon group walking around the woods, so we change scenes again. We see the Pokemon group walking around in the woods, looking for their masters. We also see Ash and his group searching around and calling out the names of Ash's Pokemon. We then change back to Team Rocket again and continue to follow the phone booth cable by pulling on it and sliding the whole phone booth along the ground because they believe that staying in the phone booth will keep them safe. Jesse tells James he could use a good workout just as they notice Pikachu walking down the path. They immediately abandon their little plan and jump out of the phone booth and jump out to catch him, only to discover that this Pikachu is actually massive, like the size of a building, like King Kong sized. Pikachu then immediately crushes the phone booth that Team Rocket had been in, and Team Rocket runs away.
Point well taken, as I said before.
Right. We then flash again to Ash and his party as they also encounter a giant Charizard. The Charizard shoots a flame at them, and they jump behind a rock, and then we change scenes again to the Pokemon party as they discover a giant Blastoise. Pikachu asks Squirtle to go ask for directions, but the Blastoise doesn't look too happy to see them and shoots water cannons at them.
So yeah, I thought it was kind of rude for Charmander to assume that all Squirtle were related because they look the same.
Yeah, I'm wondering if that was like something that got like lost in translation or something, because I could see it being like, oh, it's one of your kind of a thing.
Yeah, and also, I mean, this was the late 90s, so, you know, racist jokes were not always completely out of the question.
Jeff, come on, that was not a racist joke. They were just implying that the Bulbasaur would be able to communicate more safely with the Blastoise since they're the same Pokemon type. Like, let's not go down that road. I think that.
No, he actually says because you guys are like related or something.
Right. Like, because they're the same type of Pokemon.
Yes, but that's like assuming all humans can talk to each other. Like, never
We'll
mind.
have to agree to disagree on this one, Jeff. It's definitely not a racist joke, though. They then flee the situation and run into Venusaur. They ask Bulbasaur to go ask for directions, but it understandably refuses after what just happened. So they're like, they run into a Venusaur and then they try the exact same thing. They want to try the exact same thing with Bulbasaur, and Bulbasaur's like, nope, not doing that, and I can't blame him. We then change scenes for the 100th time and see Team Rocket running into a railroad cart on some railroad tracks as they are fleeing a giant Kabutops. Kabutops? Kabutops. They jump into the railroad cart and release the brakes, but this sends their cart flying the opposite direction towards Kabutops. Kabutops, I don't even know. They go under its feet, and the cable attached to the cart wraps around its leg, and it begins to get dragged behind the cart as it speeds away. Jesse and James agree they have to do something, so they try to put the brakes back on, but the handle breaks. We then change scenes. And we see Ash and the party running into the giant Pikachu. But before anything can happen, Team Rocket's cart crashes by the hill that they are standing in, and this basically throws Ash and his party into Team Rocket's runaway cart. Jesse and James see Ash and his party and demand that Ash gives over his Pikachu, because apparently that's important right now. But before they can respond, they see a whole bunch of giant Pokemon chasing them, including a Pikachu, Charizard, and some others. Pikachu and the other Pokemon are being chased by giant Pokemon, and Ash calls out to Pikachu. So they look up and they see So there's a lot going on right now in this scene. They fall into the cart. They're encountering Team Rocket. They look, they see the giant Pokemon, and then they also see Pikachu and his party running along a path, also being chased by giant Pokemon. So Ash calls out to Pikachu. Misty tells Ash that if he doesn't do something, they will be trampled. Not sure why this is solely on Ash, but that's what is happening, I guess. Ash tells Team Rocket to stop the cart, and they say they can't because the brake is broken. Ash responds by saying, "Give me a break." Ha, get it? Because the brake on the cart was broken. Misty then sees a giant roller coaster type flip on the tracks, and Brock tells everyone to hold on tight. So they see those in the roller coasters where it goes up in the circle and you go upside down kind of a thing. They see that up ahead. I do not know why that would be necessary to have, but that's what's there. Brock tells everyone to hold on tight, but the cart successfully makes it over the big flip around the tracks, and this gives the Pokemon gang enough time to jump into the cart.
I was thinking the exact same thing, because this, we learned later something, but this wasn't a roller coaster. It was like the transport supplies.
Yeah, it was a supply transport, and there was a big roller coaster flip on it. But,
yeah. I was really laughing at this part because my favorite part was Jessie. She had her arms up like she was on the roller coaster, and she was just going, "Stop the ride! Stop the ride!"
Right.
Which, Tyler, I feel like I was saying the exact same thing the day I almost died.
You didn't almost die, Jeff. They just forgot to buckle you in on the slingshot.
Long story short, Tyler and I went to Valley Fair near Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Tyler hates the Tilt-A-Whirl, which I love, and I made him ride it, so he made me ride the Doomsday Drop or something.
Yeah, it was this thing that raises you up into the sky and then drops you.
Yeah, so I get in, the shoulder straps comes down, and they're testing all our shoulder straps, and they pull on my belt buckle, and it comes undone. So they buckle me in, pull it again, and comes undone a second time. So the third time they still buckle me in, and the attendant of the ride gives the smallest little pull to make sure it doesn't come undone.
And another important part of the story is they were struggling to buckle it the entire time. Like, they're, like, fiddling with it and struggling to buckle it. She, like, keeps getting it latched and then gives it a tug and it pops out. And then, like, the third or fourth time, she just, like, does a little light click, is like, all right, that's good, and then leaves. And Jeff, like, looks at me in sheer terror, and I'm like, well, you're going to have a faster drop down than me.
Yeah, because then it starts rising up, and I'm like, Tyler, this isn't buckled in. This isn't buckled in. What am I doing? Like, I've never been, like, as terrified to be on a ride as myself. I love roller coasters. I love rides, but as we're going up, and even Tyler's face was like sheer terror. We both thought I was going to die that day. It got about halfway up, a good 50 feet into the air, and then the ride stopped and lowered us down, and the guy comes over the intercom and goes, we're going to have to move you guys to the other ride. This one isn't working.
Well, no, it said that it hit the weight, it was overweight capacity. So they raised it up like 50 feet, or like it's overweight capacity. So you can thank me for saving your life, Jeff, because of my aversion to workout equipment.
Me too, but that was the day I almost died, and...
Hey, at least you would have got your money's worth. You would have had quite the drop.
True.
When your harness came undone.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a good time. With everyone reunited, so everyone's in the cart now, Jesse and James realize Meowth isn't there. But just then, he pops up into the cart, and they were relieved to see him. They ask Meowth how he made it, and he says he catapulted. Get it? Because he's a cat type. Even though everyone is reunited, their problems aren't over yet, though. The giant Pokemon are all trapped on this cable and are being dragged behind the cart. Just then, however, the cable snaps and this sends the cart flying into the air. Jesse and James predict each of the moves as they happen because they are used to bad luck. So, like, they go through this whole segment where James and Jesse are like, now the cable's going to snap. Now we're going to fly up. Now we're going to hit something. And as they're saying this, everything's happening because they just typically have luck like that. The cart, of course, the cart goes flying into the air and it crashes into the giant Zapdos from earlier. But it flies right through it. And it is at this point that we realize that this is a mechanical Pokemon. So they fly right through a mechanical Zapdos. The Zapdos crashes into the other Pokemon, and the cart flies into the ocean. So the cart then flies into the ocean. With the cart in the ocean, we see a tour boat go by, while a woman welcomes everyone to Pokemon Land. Apparently, this is a theme park tour with giant mechanical Pokemon. The tour guide tells everyone it is safe. It is very safe, but then looks over and sees that all the giant Pokemon have been destroyed. So, big shock, we found out that this is actually a theme park with giant mechanical Pokemon. We then change scenes to the Team Rocket boss answering the phone to be told that the Pokemon on Pokemon Land have been destroyed. He gets angry because apparently he spent millions on this theme park. So as it turns out, this is a Team Rocket-owned theme park. I'm not surprised in the slightest that Jesse and James didn't know about this.
I had the exact same comment, but I have a question. What does Team Rocket need with a theme park? Like, that seems like a weird business venture for the boss to be going into.
Hey, I mean, Dolly Parton has a theme park. If you want a theme park and you got money, make a theme park.
Yeah, and with Jesse and James not knowing, he probably doesn't tell them information unless it is pertinent to their current mission, which he probably just gives them to keep them out of his hair. I mean, they're like when you have a classroom and there's this kid in your classroom that's always causing a commotion, so you make him run all the errands just to get him out of your classroom.
Right, absolutely. Or give them odd jobs while you're doing other things to, like, keep them busy.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, after this happens, we change scenes again back to the island where we see Ash and his party walking down a path. The narrator explains that they have finally arrived at the beautiful town of Porta Vista. They are excited and begin running for the beach. The narrator warns them to use a bunch of sunscreen, and we flash to Slowpoke sitting on the beach and pulling its tail out of the water with the shell Pokemon. What is that called again? Shelder attached to its tail. Apparently it was fishing earlier when we saw it dip its tail into the water. To be continued comes across the screen with tropical Hawaiian music playing in the background. And that was the end of our episode. And that leads me to one final point on this ending. This was the most rushed ending of any episode ever. Like, how the heck did Ash and his party figure out where they were? What happened to Team Rocket? Like, I feel like this whole ending was just really glossed over. Like, they're like, oh, the boss is mad because his theme park got destroyed, and then it comes back and, like, Ash and his party just all of a sudden now knows that A, they were in a theme park, B, where they are, and C, they've already walked to Porta Vista. Like, did we flash ahead 3 weeks? Because we know how long it takes Ash to get to new towns.
Yeah, but I don't think that he was necessarily knowing where they were at. They were just excited to see the beach. It was the narrator that said it was Porta Vista.
But it was Porta Vista, though.
Yeah, which we'll see in the next episode.
So, are you saying that, like, Ash doesn't know that that's Porta Vista?
I think they were just excited to see the beach.
Oh. I don't know. I'm going to go with my they glossed over the ending theory on this one. I think that makes a little more sense.
It was a really rushed ending, but besides that ending, I thought the episode was really fun. It was fun, especially seeing the personalities of the other Pokemon.
I agree. There was a lot of good in this episode, and then there was some things I didn't like so much from, like, a directorial standpoint, like all the scene flashes and everything like that. Like, that it just became a little bit difficult to narrate.
Yeah, I think it would have been a little better if they did 2 groups, maybe just the humans and the Pokemon.
Right, absolutely. Should have done a little more to, like, condense that.
But yeah, if you want to tell us what you thought of the episode, make sure you tweet us at Pokemon Snapshot or send us an email at thepokemonsnapshot@gmail.com. And before I go with our usual send-off, I just want to give a word of warning about next week's episode. So, if you are watching the episodes with us, you will not find this episode on Netflix or on Pokemon.com. You will not even find this episode on the DVDs, because it is known as the Lost episode. They aired it a few years after it was supposed to originally air. We are watching it in its actual broadcast time, so it makes sense with the story we're trying to tell with this podcast. So yeah, I can't wait for us to all watch next week the Lost episode, Beauty and the Beach.
It's gonna be a real beauty!